the president's focus has been on his aspiration for Chairman Powell to reduce the federal funds rate, which is, of course, the most common and understood policy tool that the Federal Reserve has to use the federal funds rate and overnight lending to direct the economy either in tightening or stimulus. You're referring really to the balance sheet as a tool for world liquidity. So in other words, reversing quantitative tightening, and are you thinking that even quantitative easing may be?
Well, let's proceed one step at a time. Let's first of all end quantitative tightening, bring the federal funds rate down, and see whether or not this is enough to offset the endogenous shock to liquidity. But I think that the Federal Reserve is sitting on its hands at a time when it is ill-advised to do so. I mean, I don't question that the first round effect of instigating tariffs is inflationary. But that's only where, and Powell has emphasized this first round effect over and over again. But what he has failed to do is to acknowledge that the second, third, fourth, and fifth rounds are severely disinflationary. And so from my perspective, it's better to look at the longer term consequence rather than the immediate term. And this dual mandate of the Federal Reserve may paralyze them at a time when they cannot afford to be paralyzed.
I think that what you're bringing up about first round effects being either inflationary or cosmetically inflationary, because even that distinction I think is important, that to the extent we're in agreement with patron saint Milton Friedman about inflation being a monetary phenomena, that targeted price increases, what you're referring to as a first round effect, the item being tariffed, seeing prices go up because of inelasticity and the need for producers to raise prices to avoid margin compression and erosion of profit margins. That those lead to second, third, and fourth round effects that are in fact disinflationary. This seems to me to be a microcosm of a much broader point you've been making for decades, that much of what people are fearful of in a first order in second, third, fourth effects becomes either disinflationary or outright deflationary. And in fact, the thing that people believe they're worried about proves to be far more innocuous than what they ought to be worried about. Is this exactly sort of a microcosm of that story?
I wouldn't change a word the way you said it, David.
No. So my question then is, when we talk about foreign direct investment declining because of the sequence of events you've laid out and the potential for this tariff impact headed in that direction, leading to liquidity shortage, leading to the need of this monetary medicine, is the possibility for a more favorable outcome present in these trade deals if in fact they succeed in opening new markets? Is this talk of new investment from Japan, European Union buying more liquefied natural gas, China buying more semiconductors, us buying more rare earth minerals, is there some green shoots in the reality? I recognize the political messaging is very rarely the economic reality, and my prima facie assumption would be that that's the case here. But is there the possibility that new markets are getting opened that will alleviate this liquidity issue?
I'm not really conversant to understand those deals. I read what was publicly available, and I thought it was very ambiguous. So to me, what is tangible are the tariffs. We can calculate their impact, and I gave you some calculations earlier. I don't know how to evaluate. In fact, some of the Europeans have said that they can't deliver on the promises that the head of the EU made. So in this particular case, we have to wait to see if they materialize. And that's where I'm just not, I don't have enough information to know whether it's a positive or whether it's um, merely a talking point. I don't have enough knowledge.
And I think, Lacy, that brings me to where my conclusion of the matter is that because I think you're exactly right that it's ambiguous. I'm not convinced the White House would know the answer to that either. There's a lot of variables around how some of these things will play out and what form they play out in. Even if a country increases orders, is this coming from foreign direct investment, or is this a byproduct? Does that dry up with the current account deficit declining?
That's one of the real problems and contradictions, because our current account deficit is going to diminish, which is going to then diminish net foreign saving. And so the EU and Japan and others that may promise this may not have the assets to carry forth the bargain. Because the great lesson that people need to understand, what I'm talking about, this linkage between the current account and the capital account, this is not an opinion from me.
Algebra.
It's algebraic substitution. And in other words, if you believe that gross domestic income equals gross domestic product, and gross domestic product is C plus I plus G plus X, if you rearrange it, what you get is that the current account is -1 multiplied times the capital account, or vice versa. They are the inverse. Yeah. And so how do you have the funds to honor an investment flow if your resources are coming down? It's almost a contradiction in terms.
Is it fair to say, economics being marginal as they are, it does seem to me that you were using on some of the tariff dollars, and you mentioned the Yale estimate of a near 20% level. Some of those seem to me to be near the peak of worst case scenario. But at 600 billion, just to do the math, at 20% of 3 trillion, and that I assume was on imported goods only.
Yes, goods only.
But if we assume that by the time all the deals are said and done and various carve-outs, there are a few line items that are seeing their tariff level decline and we don't know where the Mexico and Canada side of this will net out. If we end up at a blended rate that is 400 billion of cost, that's 200 billion less than the 600, but it's significantly higher than the level we've been experiencing. Are those just marginal changes? The directional expectation would still be the same?
I think that I personally think that the tariff will probably settle in around 15 to 16. Okay. But right now, based upon everything that we have, and keep in mind that we have a lot of that haven't been settled, and we also have sector tariffs, which complicates the whole process of the computation process. But 15 or 16% is still a monumental impact, in my opinion.
450 billion, Lacy, is greater than the tax cuts that are part of the One Big Beautiful Bill, from 100% business expensing, bonus depreciation, R&D deduction, interest cost deduction. There's a stimulative effect on the margin in the Big Beautiful Bill that I think is supply side and pro-growth. And soaking wet, it's estimated to be about 300 billion. So even in a better case scenario of 15%, this would trump that by an extra, this would exceed that by another 150
I think
billion.
your points are well made. I ran the numbers a little bit differently. The CBO has said that the Big Beautiful Bill will add $3.4 trillion to debt over the next 10 years. They also indicated that $3 trillion was the cost of just merely rolling over the 2017 Act. In other words, when you net out all the other good items that you listed, and also the expenditure reductions, according to the latest numbers from the CBO, the effect is 400 billion of net stimulus over 10 years. That's 40 billion a year.
Yeah.
The imports are already running at about a 370 billion annual rate.
Yeah.
And the CBO numbers do not take into account any saving that may have been effectuated by the Doge effort.
Yeah.
So I don't believe that there is any net stimulus coming net from all of the fiscal policy operations. In fact, we're in negative territory.